Hello guys, Liam here from 94.7 The Pulse, the voice for Geelong and the Variety Show with Liam podcast. This is an exclusive interview for the shows. Richard Jobson from the Skids is here with us today to talk a bit about the upcoming Australian tour for the Skids. You'll learn a lot about the band, some of the songs and its history, and what 45 years has meant to him and for the band in general. So if you're a big fan of the Skids and great 1970s punk music, you're going to enjoy this interview. So let's get into this wonderful interview. Alright guys, I'm Liam Hare here from 94.7 The Pulse, the voice for Geelong and Variety Show with Liam, here to interview Richard Jobson from the Skids ahead of their amazing Australian tour. Now, we just mentioned briefly that there originally was going to be an opportunity for the band to come around after the original Hammersmith Odeon gig. Whatever happened to that?
Yeah, we were at the peak of our powers. We had a number one album. We had just done a sold out tour of the UK and Ireland, and we were all set to come down to Australia and then tour North America. But then the guy that wrote the songs with me, Stuart Adamson, decided to leave the band, and that was the end of it. So that was the end of the Skids, really. So he went on to obviously create Big Country, which became a kind of global sensation for a brief period. So yeah, he threw that one at me, a curveball at the very moment where we were at the peak of our powers, which was a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, that would have been around about the Absolute Game period, wouldn't it? 1980.
Exactly. So it was the Absolute Game tour, and it had been a phenomenal success. And the album had been tremendously well received. So we were set. It's like bands get to a place where they're set. We were set. And then he decided. I mean, his looking back, it's kind of probably quite a good thing that we finished at our peak, because a lot of bands hit a peak and then they either have a very slow wind down to kind of insignificance, or they have a jump off the cliff into insignificance. The void is waiting for all bands, I can assure you. But we stopped right at the peak, and so I guess that maybe historically wasn't such a bad thing.
Yeah, we wouldn't have got Big Country anyway, so something had to give.
I guess so. I mean, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, don't get me started.
Uh, let's jump into some songs of discussions. I guess the first one we'll cover is from Scared to Dance, Into the Valley. So what are your memories of creating this amazing song?
Well, I remember we were in the studio recording "The Saints Are Coming," which was the song that we released prior to Into the Valley. And in fact, weirdly enough, "The Saints Are Coming" has now become probably our most famous song, but internationally. But so we were playing that, and I can play a little bit of piano, and I was playing this tune, which was dan 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 dan, and Stuart goes, "What's that?" And I went, "It's this thing I'm working on," and I had a lyric, and believe it or not, the lyric was called "Depersonalized," which is not the catchiest title. And so we started to muck around with it, and our producer, a guy called David Batchelor, kind of started to reconfigure what we were working on, and it merged into this really powerful song, "Into the Valley," with Stuart's amazing guitar work. Stuart's evolution as a guitarist was really finding its feet by that time. He had his own identifiable sound, which was different from all of the other kind of punk musicians at the time, I think, because when you hear Stuart Adamson play, it's him. It can be nobody else. And I think that a lot of people copied him. You hear things like "She Sells Sanctuary" by The Cult, and you think, well, wait a minute, that's Stuart Adamson. It's the same guitar work. And a lot of people out there, were very influenced by his playing, for sure.
Hmm. My first song I came across from you guys was "Working for the Yankee Dollar." So what's the history, or what is the meaning that you're trying to bring across for Yankee Dollar from Days in Europa?
Well, I think at the time the Skids were quite a political band. Stuart was much more of a Scottish nationalist, which I wasn't. I was much more of a socialist, but our politics were very left wing, and we felt the tentacles of American imperialism was kind of all over us in Europe and in Southeast Asia and in South America, not in a good way, I might add. So, we wanted to comment on that. And it was also a reflection of a lot of movies that had come out at the time. There's a lot of films about Vietnam had just been released. So, that kind of influenced the way I thought about American intervention in Southeast Asia and stuff. So, yeah, it was kind of born from that. But it was also, it had to still have that Skids feel, which if you were to say, what's a Skids song? To me, it had to have a very powerful guitar melody and a huge chorus, which was anthemic that people could sing along to. So you mentioned Into the Valley prior to this. That's exactly the paradigm of that song. And Working for the Yankee Dollar fits into the same groove, I think. It's a serious lyric with a powerful tune and a massive chorus that people like to sing along to, which is a great thing for if you're a live band, because the live playing is all about the connection with you and the audience, and having songs that have anthems is perfect.
Yeah, I guess the same could be said in kind of relation to like Chance or Fields of Fire from Big Country as well. They have that same callback mechanism as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think the early Big Country stuff is definitely evolution from the Skids. There's no doubt about it. It has similar kind of guitar style, which is Stuart, of course, and it has the big chorus. I think as he moved on through his career with Big Country, the songs became a bit more sophisticated and less rabble rousing, which I prefer the rabble rousing element. Even in the new album we released, Destination Dusseldorf, it's full of big choruses, and I love a big chorus.
Nice. I think this came to a surprise as most fans, but our classic albums, Days in Europe or Scared to Dance, they all re-entered the charts because they got reissued on vinyls. Like it was like top 5 in Scotland. So what was that reaction that your classic material had just re-entered the charts this year?
Well, it's a fascinating thing that we released Destination Dusseldorf and Days in Europa at the same time, and we went to number 1 and number 2, which was an amazing thing. It's something we didn't expect. So I think two things are at play there. One is the resurgence of vinyl. Vinyl is a huge thing. I'm sure it's the same in Australia. It's a really massive thing now, and I think I know why. I think it sounds better, it feels real, and also the covers are iconic. When I was a kid, an album was your personal artwork. It was your connection with the world of art. The kind of graphic sensibility of a sleeve. And that disappeared with CDs and, of course, with streaming. It's just gone. So I think it's a nostalgic thing for sure, but it's also a return to claiming music back as being iconic. And also it's about albums that were albums, not pieces of music that were created with one specific song and then you just chuck in another 6 or 7 songs around it. We're from the era where you made an album and every song had to be special and it had a balance and a rhythm and a flow. It had its own little story, a beginning, a middle, and an end, an album. Whereas now, if you think about a lot of contemporary acts, that's almost an irrelevance because it's about one specific or 2 specific songs. So I think maybe that's what lies at the heart of it. But you can never get away from the heritage and nostalgia trail, which, that's what we're part of. I understand that, but we're trying to make ourselves at least relevant to us by making new material that reflects, some of the shit that's going on in the world. And there's a lot of stuff going on.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the important parts of buying vinyl is you can't skip. You have to listen to the whole way through both sides. And you can pick up on like your favorite things like just by doing that. It's not like easy streaming.
Yeah,
Clearly.
I think so. And you can't cheat vinyl. So, you have to have a relationship with it, because if you're not delicate with it, you can damage it. So this is a tactile thing. So it becomes much more human, I think, your relationship with vinyl, if that doesn't sound preposterous. Whereas your relationship with streaming is very much you're dealing with a robot, and that robot doesn't really give a shit about you. Whereas the vinyl is, it feels organic and it feels real, and I said there's a whole history in those records. You can hear it in the crackles, in the spaces in between. And of course, most importantly, it sounds better. I mean, that's the key to it all. If you've got the right equipment, vinyl sounds amazing.
Yeah, very true, very true. Looking at some of the venues you're coming towards here, the Tiffin in Brisbane, Manning Bar here in Sydney. Well, I'm here in Melbourne actually for Max Watts, the Gov in Adelaide, and Rosemont Hotel. Which one of the venues have been looking forward to digging into?
Well, I think all of it really. It's a new journey for me. It's a brand new experience. You know, you got to put it the boot on the other foot. Imagine if you were in your band and you're coming over to Scotland and you're thinking, I'm playing Edinburgh, Glasgow, Aberdeen, Dundee. You know, and you think, wow, what are these places like? I know about them because I know people from these places, but I've never been there. I've never felt it. So part of the joy of this journey we're about to embark on is exactly that. You know, I hate to call it tourism because it's not. It's really, I want to get to know the places as much as I can and get to meet a lot of different people. And you know, we're going to be roughing it. You know, we're not Led Zeppelin, man. We're not coming in a private jet. We're flying steerage. We arrive in Brisbane and we start playing as soon as we arrive. We don't have road crew. We just do it ourselves. You know, so we're old school, and I think I get the feeling that Australians will relate to that a lot. You know, that we're not pompous and we're the real deal. And I like to connect with the audience. I like to talk a lot, tell stories, bit of a raconteur in many ways. And the music obviously is essentially a part of that. But a Skids gig to me is like it's like a show in that, you know, it flows and there's bits in between where I do a lot of talking and telling stories, and you know, they're self-deprecatory stories, so I'm taking the piss out of myself. So I just instinctively get the feeling that's going to work in Australia. I mean, it works in the UK, but I still feel. I mean, in Europe it's tougher. In North America, I don't think they would get it, but I think they'll get it. You know, in Oz. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think definitely in Australia with our iconic pub rock scene, where it's kind of like you had to do the circuits there before you got national.
Yeah,
So definitely that rough and tough scene, you'll definitely fit in quite well. I'm surprised you guys didn't consider New Zealand because it's like just
we
across.
are. We are going. No, we
Oh,
are
you're
going.
going to New Zealand as well?
Yeah, yeah, we're going to Auckland. Yeah, yeah. So we are going in between. So we don't even have any days off. The days off, you know. And I've been trying to explain to the other band members. I said, listen, physically, never mind emotionally, physically, you have to get ready for this because Australia is not a country; it's a continent. This place is it's the size of Europe. So when we go to like Brisbane to Perth or whatever, this is like, you know, these are huge, huge distances, and then suddenly you're on a flight to Auckland, and then you've got to come back again and play in Melbourne or whatever. This is not like going from Edinburgh to Newcastle. This is like going to the other. You know, this is huge. So the geography, I think, freaked everybody out a bit because it's one hell of a size of a place where you live.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like just like even here from Mount Dunedin to like Melbourne, it's like an hour's drive. So I definitely get that. It's a commute, it's an adventure, it's definitely relatable.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
definitely relatable.
But that again, for us, rather than it being something to get anxious about, is part of the journey. You know, it's just like this is part of the experience. And if you don't mind the more grueling physical part of it, then hallelujah. You know, it's going to be something that, you know, it's a special moment for us because I get the feeling it's now or never. So it's now. It's not never.
Mm. One of my favorite songs from, I think it's an album not many people do remember, Joy, which was that final album before everything kind of closed over for a little while. Fields. What do you
Yeah.
remember of that final album in 1981 after Stewart
Um,
had left?
yeah, we were trying to create something because the Skids always have a kind of folky element in the music anyway, and maybe Stuart took that into Big Country with his guitar riffs that sound very, very Scottish. I didn't really want us to sound like a kind of Scottish folk band, but I wanted us to kind of have the power of those words connected with, you know, taking that type of music into the world of punk. the Pogues did it to great success, and I kind of thought the Skids could move into that territory just a little bit, not too much. And so with Fields, we tried to do that for the first time, and it was the first time I'd ever worked without Stuart, so that was weird. I had some nice people around me. I was working with my friend Billy McKenzie from the Associates, sang the backing vocals. Billy had the most beautiful voice. He's sadly no longer with us. And it just felt powerful to me. And it was a song about the world that I came from in Scotland. You know, it was a kind of quite biographical about my life as a kid and stuff, working in the fields, because I came from a very working class background. And then when the school term finished, I used to have to go and work in the fields and pick potatoes, or go to the berry area in the north of Scotland and pick all the berries. So it was quite tough work as a young kid, but you didn't know anything else, so you just took it for granted. That's how life was. And it set me up for later in life. So the song is about that essentially, but we wanted to give it a new kind of power. One of the great things I always take away with that song is I remember meeting the Pogues, and they said to me that Fields was one of their favourite songs. So that means a hell of a lot to me. That's quite a tribute from one of the great bands of all time.
Yeah, and then you guys brought it back on that for the Destination Dusseldorf tour when you did a whole bunch of acoustic numbers.
Yeah, we did an acoustic tour, and we did that. We did we did lots of stuff that are quite odd acoustically, but it was great fun. I love the acoustic thing because it's a long show. It's about 3 hours long, but it's more about storytelling than it is about the songs. So, the songs are almost play second fiddle to this whole evening of. I mean, I've had quite a life, and some of it's been incredible, and some of it's been really kind of awful. So there's a nice balance in there of storytelling and sharing that with people. I don't mean like in a pompous way. Hey, look at me! I've done this. It's saying I was involved in these projects with these people. This is what it was like. Sometimes it's very funny, and then other times it ends quite tragically. So. And I talk about Stuart a lot, obviously, because people want to know what he was like, and he died very, very tragically.
Yeah.
It's quite a shock. And also I worked with another great guitarist from Scotland called John McGeoch, who was in Magazine, then he was in Susie and the Banshees, and I started a band with him called the Armory Show for a while, which was essentially John's band, and it didn't really work. Sadly, the music was great, but I think it was the right music, but the wrong time. And, we were kind of running a parallel course with Big Country, and they were like rising to the top, and we were just going further into the void. So it was difficult. So John left and started, joined Pill. And he sadly died too, John. He had a lot of problems with alcohol abuse. So, it's a terrible thing that people feel the need for that kind of help, when they're in rock and roll bands like alcohol and drugs, and they also believe in the mythology that it makes you more creative, which it doesn't. The band I'm with now, really none of us drink, and certainly none of us do drugs. So we just love the fun of it. It's a fun thing for us to do. So I keep clear of that because I'm surrounded with people who believed in the myth of getting messed up, and you could still do it. I think there's only one person alive who's managed to do that, and he's in the Rolling Stones. And somehow or other, he managed to do it, Keith. And everybody else failed, and most of the other ones are dead.
Mm. Including one of your own to some extent, fell down that path.
Two. Both Stuart Adamson and John McGeoch, both, died tragically because of their addictions, which is very, very sad.
Yeah. When you look back on the catalogue of the Skids, which album are you most proud of, and why?
I think Days in Europa, because it was a game changer for us. Skids to Dance was a great album. It had some nice songs on it. Sense of Coming, obviously, Into the Valley, Melancholy Soldiers, all really nice classic Skids songs. But we needed to evolve, and Days in Europa was definitely an evolution. it started with our relationship with the producer Bill Nelson, the great guitar player, who produced the single Masquerade just before Days in Europa, and gave us a new sound, brought some keyboards into it, um, made me really proud of my lyrics rather than being shy of them. And then we got into the studio to do Days in Europa. We were working with a great drummer called Rusty Egan, who was with the Rich Kids and Visage, and he was the guy behind the whole new romantic thing that happened in London. And he changed the way we structured our songs, and I just think it's a great album, and it still stands up to this day. You know, and it had a very iconic sleeve, and you know, it remains. I think it remains my proudest moment with the Skids by a long way, I think.
And even it got censored by the BBC back in the day as well. They had to re-release the album because it was relating to some thing in World War II.
Well, that's a myth because the album was never banned or censored by anyone. What happened was that Virgin didn't like the mix of, let me just say, this version, which is by far the best version, and
It
then
is.
and they did a remix, and where they highlighted the guitars rather than the keyboards. So there was two versions available. The other version, that version I just showed you, was never ever taken off the shelves. The only way we agreed to do it with Virgin is if they released the new one, the new version, and the old version at the same time. So you had a choice. So the version I just showed you has been on shelves since that day, you know. So it was never banned. It's one of those horrible myths that kind of, you know, it's like it's amazing really how that mythology becomes fact, you know, when it's just completely untrue. I don't know where that originally came from, that story, but let's just put it straight right now, Liam, that it's not true, and never was true.
And it never happened.
It never happened. No, it's there. The evidence is there. It's available. You can buy it, you know. So I don't understand this whole bullshit about it being banned. The sleeve, some people didn't like the sleeve, of course, because they felt it was controversial. But it never got banned. The sleeve of the album Days in Europa was originally going to be called The Olympian, which is a track which is on the album, which we play live, and we will be playing in Australia. And that's originally why it was that we had that sleeve. But then we changed it to Days in Europa, because by that time I was spending a lot of time in Europe rather than in the UK, and I was living in Germany, in the city of Berlin. So, you know, my whole outlook on Europe and the world had changed quite dramatically by that time. So the album fitted that very much at the time for me.
Well, there you go. We have a couple of fan questions. Obviously, one relating to the documentary that was released, the documentary that came on when you did the gig over in Dunfermline. When is that being released?
Well, the documentary I don't know about. I mean, I know it got a premiere at a festival in Glasgow 2 weeks ago, and people seem to like it. And then it did one in London at a festival called Dock and Roll, which is documentary and is the pun on rock and roll. And again, it was very well attended. I didn't see it because I was out playing. So I don't really have much to do with it, to be honest with you. It's what I've seen of it, the film, it very much focuses on the band and where they're from. We're from a small town in the east of Scotland called Dunfermline. Very hard to pronounce.
Yes.
Dunfermline.
Dunfermline, yes.
Yeah, that's it. And the film focuses on the fact that the band originated from there. And I think what it's trying to say is it's a small, sleepy town, and this very, very successful band came out of that. And it's a nice film, what I've seen of it, but I've not seen the finished version. There's another film being made at the moment by Sky TV, and that filmed us playing an acoustic gig in Dunfermline Abbey recently, but it's Follow Me Around, and that film is more about my story. So it's not just the Skids, it's about the movies that I've made and the books that I've written and stuff. So it's about the whole journey that I've been on. And then, in fact, they're even thinking about coming out to Australia and filming some of the gigs in Australia. So that would be amazing. well, the director will come out and he'll hire a crew, I would imagine, out there. So yeah, that's a different film, and that's definitely going to be on television. The other one, I don't know what's happening with it, but I think it will be available at some point in time. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously that live one someone else mentioned as well from the fan page that there was a potential going to be a live DVD of some sort coming out, perhaps a CD as
Well,
well.
this is we did a live acoustic gig in Dunfermline Abbey, which is a very historic building, and we were the first people ever to be allowed in there to do that kind of thing, and it was a great evening. That's going to be part of that film that Sky are making, so I don't think it's going to be the gig in its entirety. I wouldn't have thought, but who knows? Maybe they will do that. I don't really know. When other people make projects about us, especially film related things, I tend to take a bit of a step backwards from it because I do that myself. And if I have too much intervention on it, it feels like I'm imposing my vision on it. So I have to let the filmmakers just get on with it and not ask too many questions because it makes them a little bit paranoid, that I'm all over them.
Well, there you go. Well, thanks for that, and thank you for this opportunity to give us an interview, a bit of an insight of what's coming our way in Australia.
Yeah, great. Can't wait. I'm really, really genuinely excited. And hopefully I'll see you at one of the gigs.
Yeah, I'll be over at Max Watts, definitely.
Yeah, great. Well, come and say hello.
I will definitely be saying hello.